what do you see as the some of the challenges that founders, starting or scaling financial services should be aware of?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a couple in terms of sort of fintech overall. There's obviously, you need to know I think what we see in great founders is founders that know, have a personal sort of understanding of what they're building, right? So I think knowing the problem well, knowing the problem you're solving, because I think oftentimes there's sort of this bigger vision, but you're not really sure of what exactly is the problem you're solving and whether it's a problem at all. So I would say, like being able to articulate and define the problem that you're solving, and the market that you're solving it for. I think one challenge is oftentimes the sort of cross-border, that you need to believe in Latin America, right? Like I think Brazil makes a lot of sense as a market by itself, and Mexico. But then once you start looking at sort of the smaller markets, you need to believe that in order to for it to make sense, for example, as an investment or to scale, that you can actually translate the problem across countries. And I think oftentimes, people are very focused on the problem in their specific country, and it's not oftentimes actually that scalable cross border. So I think is actually the ability to scale, and it's easier said than done for sure, in terms of actually being able to bring your business from one market to the other. So I would say sort of, finding ways to validate those hypotheses and finding ways to sort of, I guess, just figure out whether your problem is scalable from one country to the next, is one problem or one challenge that I've seen. I think the other is sort of lack of trust. I think a lot of fintech businesses in Latin America are dealing with this lack of trust towards financial institutions that already exists. And so being able to build that trust is actually a pretty big challenge and barrier to overcome. Because as much as you can have sort of an objectively better product and experience, if the customer doesn't trust your brand and doesn't trust your product, then you're going to have a really hard time actually getting that adoption, especially at a larger scale. So I would say even from early on, like starting to build that trust with the customer, I think is a really important thing to focus on. And then I would say the third is probably just sort of the mix of channels and acquisition strategies. So sort of customer acquisition can be a big challenge. And I think oftentimes from sort of your very first sort of pilot phase to a scalable model is when you actually figure out, maybe in the hard way, which are the more expensive channels and which is actually the more I guess, sustainable way of acquiring your customers. So understanding really well what your go-to-market strategy is going to be, whether or not you implement it sort of from day one, but just knowing, where your margins lie, where your customers lie, and how much it costs to acquire them, I think is something that founders need to focus on more, especially as they're starting to build out. So I think those are some of the things that I would highlight.